Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Before we move into the main stories, a quick piece of clarification after yesterday's video. I received dozens of emails and comments on this, so it's worth clarifying as there may have been some confusion. In yesterday's video, we discussed Chinese battery maker CATL, quote, introducing cutting-edge technology, including a battery capable of charging 520 kilometers of range in 5 minutes and delivering 1,500 kilometers on a full charge, end quote. I then said that this was 932 miles. To clarify, I was converting the 1,500 kilometers, not the 520 kilometers. I obviously did not make this clear enough in the video. My apologies for any confusion caused. Now, let's move into the video. And first up, finance ministers and central bank governors from the group of 7 G7 nations concluded their meeting in Canada with a communique that set aside divisions over US tariffs and focused on countering global economic, quote, imbalances, end quote, in a lightly veiled threat against China's trade practices. The final statement from the world's 7 richest democracies, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, emphasized the need to address, quote, non-market policies and practices, end quote, that distort global competition. While the communique did not explicitly name China, the language marked a coordinated response to concerns about Beijing's export subsidies, opaque industrial policies, and currency interventions. Quote, we agreed on the importance of a level playing field and a broadly coordinated approach to address the harm caused by those who do not abide by the same rules and lack transparency, end quote, the statement read. The Canadian finance minister who hosted the summit stressed the discussions were frank and constructive, even amid lingering tensions over US trade policies. Quote, there will always be tension around tariffs, but there are also places where you find common ground, end quote, he said, pointing to the shared concerns about market practices. This also very much goes to show that Beijing's strategy of leveraging the US-led trade reset under the Trump administration in order to pull the Europeans away from the US and more towards China is unlikely to succeed. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff McClem was more direct, referencing, quote, unfair trading practices in China, end quote, in his closing remarks. He also noted a more constructive tone in discussions compared to earlier meetings, such as the contentious G7 foreign ministers gathering in March. The communique also touched on a growing issue, the surge of low-value de minimis shipments from online retailers, many based in China. Indeed, the majority of volume comes from China. Officials warned that these packages could overwhelm customs systems and facilitate the smuggling of illicit materials. The ministers also agreed to keep Russia's sovereign assets frozen until Moscow, quote, ends its aggression and compensates Ukraine, end quote. Ukraine's finance minister attended the summit, addressing officials on the need for reconstruction support. Despite policy gaps, the G7 presented a united front ahead of the leaders' summit in June, saying the group felt a, quote, renewed sense of action, end quote, to tackle global economic challenges. Beijing will not be pleased, of course. As regular viewers know, exports currently represent China's only healthy growth driver, with the US trade reset already threatening millions of jobs. A united front of developed nations against China's trade could be devastating to China's already shaky economic state. And on that note, we now move to the Chinese economy. China's demand for gold surged to an 11-month high in April, even as prices hit record levels, reflecting a broader shift in investor sentiment amid geopolitical uncertainty. According to customs data released on Tuesday, China imported 127.5 metric tons of gold last month, a 73% increase from March, despite the metal reaching a peak of $3,500 per ounce. Analysts attribute the spike to the People's Bank of China easing its controls on bullion inflows by allocating new import quotas to select commercial banks. The central bank's move reflects robust demand from both institutional and retail investors seeking safe haven assets during the height of trade tensions with the US. or the height so far at least. While gold prices have moderated in May, expectations of continued central bank accumulation and dollar diversification are likely to provide ongoing support. The People's Bank of China has steadily increased its gold reserves in recent years as part of its strategy to reduce reliance on dollar-denominated assets. Meanwhile, in contrast to the bullish trend in gold, a new report identifies China's 20 through 39-year-old demographic as the key driver behind a notable consumption slowdown in the country, highlighting structural shifts in the economy. A report by China-based Suzhou Securities published this week reveals that the 20 through 39 age cohort, once a key engine of consumption growth, has become the primary contributor to the slowdown between 2018 and 2022. The group accounted for roughly 44% of the decline in consumption during that period. The trend is most acute among those aged 20 to 30, where high youth unemployment has created a negative feedback loop. Poor job prospects lead to reduced income and lower spending, which in turn dampens overall consumption. Although the April jobless rate for the 16 through 24-year-old group, excluding students, fell to a yearly low of 15.8%, employment challenges remain severe, and indeed many analysts have questioned the accuracy of these official numbers. Structural mismatches in the labour market and external economic headwinds continue to weigh on confidence. And should the trade war re-intensify, manufacturing will be hit hard with millions of jobs at risk. Of course, this is all part of the wider US-China Cold War. As we move into this period of rapid change, if you want to be on top of all things related to this new Cold War generally, or China specifically, make sure you're subscribed to China Update, hit the bell notification icon, and you will be. And if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. And finally for today, a new flashpoint has emerged in the ongoing US-China technology war. At issue is recent guidance from the US Department of Commerce that warns against the global use of Huawei's Ascend AI chips, citing potential violations of export controls. China swiftly condemned the move, calling it an act of, quote, unilateralism and bullying. End quote. In a meeting with Asia Society, Foreign Minister Wang Yi accused the US of attempting to mount a, quote, complete blockade, end quote, of China's semiconductor progress. A follow-up statement from China's Ministry of Commerce reiterated the charge, warning that these actions, quote, undermine the stability of the global semiconductor industry chain and deprive other countries of the right to develop high-tech industries. End quote. More significantly, Beijing has raised the stakes by invoking its 2021 anti-foreign sanctions law. The law stipulates that any organization that assists in enforcing US sanctions could be prosecuted and liable for damages in Chinese courts. This legal threat creates a dangerous dual compliance dilemma for international firms: comply with US export guidance and face Chinese legal retaliation, or vice versa. While Chinese firms are likely to defy US measures within domestic borders, the guidance leaves international players, especially in Southeast Asia, the Middle East and Africa, in a high-risk grey zone. For many, using Chinese chips now carries geopolitical consequences far beyond commercial considerations. Beyond the fiery diplomatic exchange is a broader strategic chess game over artificial intelligence supremacy. The US appears to be shifting toward a two-pronged approach: containment within China and expansion outside of it. Speaking to US-based Bloomberg TV, White House AI advisor Siram Krishnan affirmed the administration's hardline stance on chip exports to China, while signaling a more open posture toward allies and neutral countries. Quote, "We want the American AI stack, from GPUs to models, to dominate the global landscape," end quote, Krishnan said. He also noted recent deals in the Middle East, including GPU deployments in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, where US firms will retain operational control to prevent unauthorized technology transfers. This strategy contrasts with Beijing's own aspirations to shape AI. In an April Politburo session, General Secretary Xi Jinping called for greater international cooperation to help developing nations bridge the, quote, global intelligence divide, end quote, and advocated for harmonized AI governance rules. Analysts see this positioning as a countermove to US technology containment, an effort to build a parallel AI order rooted in Chinese standards and influence. The clash over Huawei's Ascend chips also underscores China's growing confidence in its domestic AI ecosystem. Whether this is well placed or not, of course, remains remains to be seen. Open source models like DeepSeek, touted as China's answer to OpenAI and Meta, have gained traction, offering developing nations a free alternative with fewer restrictions than Western platforms. With DeepSeek, Beijing sees an opportunity to pursue a digital version of its historical Maoist strategy, encircling the cities from the countryside. If successful, the campaign could challenge Western dominance not only in technology but also in narrative control and soft power projection. After all, AI would be dominated by Beijing's worldview. The US, aware of this threat, recently scrapped the Biden-era so-called AI diffusion rule in favor of a more flexible export strategy. The rule had restricted high-end chips to a narrow group of partners, inadvertently creating a GPU haves and have-nots divide, according to Krishnan. This new policy aims to democratize access across US allies while tightening controls on rivals. But some are not happy with the status quo. Nvidia, the leading US AI chip maker, is already feeling the financial impact. CEO Jensen Huang has criticized the export controls as a, quote, failure, end quote, that cost the company $5.5 billion in lost sales of its H20 chips designed to meet earlier restrictions. Huang warned that the US risks forfeiting the Chinese market worth an estimated $50 billion by 2026 to competitors like Huawei if it continues tightening the screws. Huang, who of course has a sizable conflict of interest, urged Washington to ease restrictions, noting China accounts for half of the world's AI developers and emphasizing the strategic need for US technology to remain their platform of choice. Quote, power is cheap, land is abundant in China, end quote, Huang said, adding, quote, if we do not act, Huawei and startups will fill the void, end quote. Yet Washington seems unmoved. An unnamed senior White House official speaking to US-based The Wall Street Journal acknowledged the broader concerns but reaffirmed bipartisan support for maintaining strict controls on chips destined for China. With trade negotiations between the US and China tentatively resuming under the so-called Geneva Truce, there is speculation that Beijing may use the Huawei chip guidance as a pretext to revisit the terms. Chinese think tanks have hinted that a robust counterattack on the US chip ban could bolster China's leverage in future talks. The path forward remains fraught. For global companies, especially in regions aligned with neither superpower, the Huawei chip saga represents a deeper truth. AI and chips will be the oil in this new, emerging Cold War. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend. There may be an extra episode this weekend, so I will either see you this weekend or for a new week of updates on Monday.